question at this time is taken from the book of Matthew chapter 24. And we've been asked just what is the abomination of desolation that's described there. Well, if you look at Matthew chapter 24 and there verse 15, that's where Jesus speaks about this event. He says there, Jesus says, when you see therefore the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, he said, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. He goes on to say, then let him which be in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down, or take anything out of his house. And he goes on from there. Now, what is he talking about here? What is under discussion when we talk about this abomination of desolation business? You know, if you heard people talk about that today, a lot of people would give you all kinds of far-fetched and varying answers and all types of things like that. But really, when we open up the Bible and consider the context of this book and this chapter, as well as the context of what's going on, it's not hard to figure out what's being said. If you begin in this passage, he says the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel. Well, if you turn in your Bibles back to Daniel 9 and verse 27, Daniel is speaking of an event, and he's talking about this very event. Now please understand, Daniel lived in the days of Babylon. That is, the Babylonian Empire was the power at that time, was the world power. Daniel, in his day, was able to himself have visions. Nebuchadnezzar had a vision. You remember of that big statue-like thing of the man and the various, made up of the various metals. And then Daniel had some visions about animals and things like that. But it all boiled down to the fact that Daniel, at his point in time, is looking forward in time and seeing basically four kingdoms. There was the kingdom of Babylon, the kingdom of Medes and the Persians, the kingdom of the Greeks, and the kingdom of the Romans. And all of those came to pass and they came and they left, and then you come to the days of Christ. Well, by the time you get to the day of Christ, now we have the Roman Empire in power. And it's interesting to notice that Jesus, John, the apostle who wrote the book of Revelation, would then look backward in time and say, you know, you remember those kingdoms back yonder? And now we're in this final kingdom time here. And here it is with Rome in power. That's what's going on. And so when Jesus is speaking, he's speaking about events happening in the days of the Roman Empire. Now, to the context of Matthew 24, Jesus says that there's going to be a day coming when one stone will not be left upon another of the temple. And he describes that day. He's trying to get his apostles ready for that time period, which happened. It already came to pass. The abomination of desolation under discussion here is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, that which occurred in AD 70. And how that in the time of AD 70, all these things came to pass. And Jesus, in fact, in Matthew 24 says that this generation shall not pass till all these things have happened. And it is Jesus who says, you know, that this is going to happen. If you're in Judea, flee to the mountains. And if you're on the housetop, don't come down, take your stuff, just run away. Pray your flight be not on the Sabbath day. Pray your flight be not in the winter time. And the hardships that pregnant women might face during those days. You see, people have taken this passage and mixed it up and wrangled it up till they think it's talking about the end of the world. Now I want you to look at that. If it's talking about the end of the world, then what is going to the mountains going to do? What is on the housetop and not getting your stuff? Pray your flight be not on the Sabbath day. If it's the end of the world, what does the Sabbath day have to do with anything? If the Lord comes, when the Lord comes, it doesn't matter where you are, where you're living, or anything like that. It is time to go. But when it comes to the abomination of desolation, that destruction of Jerusalem, it was a very specific time for very specific people, and it's something that came to pass in AD 70 just as Christ had promised. It came to pass, and those ready, of course, were delivered from that, and of course then finally His people were delivered, and we have obviously passed through that time period even today. Now, does that mean God doesn't judge nations? Of course He does. He judges people yet today. But this passage of Matthew 24 has been fulfilled and was fulfilled in AD 70.